talk about An Outpost of Progress by Joseph Conrad and how it relates to How to Read Like a Professor. So, let's first off, An Outpost of Progress is about these two guys named Carlier and Kayer. Kayer is the manager, business person. Carlier is his assistant. Then they have a slave named Makola, and he lives with his family. And they never really say that he's the slave, just like the way that like the guys treat him, like he's obviously a slave. And he's black, and then the two guys, the main characters, Kayer and Carlier, they're both white. So they live in this trading post that's in Africa, this continent right here, and it's right off a river, which is right in front of a big jungle. And so the way it relates to How to Read Like a Professor is because it is all about politics, and it's about race, and it's about exerting power over each other. Kayer exerts his power over Carlier by saying, if I give way now to that brute of a soldier, he will begin this horror, trample on me, make me his slave. So he's not saying he's actually going to like make him his slave, but he's just saying if he helps Carlier in that moment that he's going to give up his power, which he doesn't want to do because Carlier is supposed to be his assistant. And then race comes in because they talk about Makola in rude ways. They just make comments to him and stuff. So, but what he says in How to Read Like a Professor, he says, political writing addresses the realities in its world, including human problems, for example, power, gender, etc. So, this story is mostly about power and how they have to exert it over each other. So, in Dylan Thomas's Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night, it relates to Foster's chapter called The Quest. And in that chapter, he says that challenges must be faced during a path to a destination. And that is exactly what Dylan Thomas is talking about in the poem. He says that he says, wild men who caught and sang in the sun and fight and learned too late, they grieved it on its way. So he's saying that people who rush through life and don't realize what they should know, they don't pick up any wisdom, they face challenges because then when they're about to die, they realize that they don't know anything and that they just like lived life recklessly and that they haven't actually done anything, and that makes them upset. And quote, they don't go gentle into that good night. But so they have challenges because they're like about to die and they're trying to learn everything, and then just it never works out. So his reasoning behind the statement and the rest of the poem shows the struggles of knowledge that comes with life. The wild men realize their wrongdoing, which the reader can relate to and faces a challenge. The last story I'm going to talk about is James Joyce's Araby and how it relates to How to Read Like a Professor, because it is all about sex, which is the chapter in How to Read Like a Professor. So the story is about this little kid who it doesn't really say he's little, but I assume he's little, and he's in love with the girl next door, and he thinks about her all the time, and it turns into this obsession, and then he'll go upstairs secretly and like do his stuff in the attic when it's really dark and he's peeking through and he can kind of see her. But yeah, okay. So it relates to How to Read Like a Professor because he says in his story that sex is usually hidden in metaphors. And in Araby, it never says like he goes upstairs and jacks off. All he says is that he goes upstairs and he says, her name was like a summons to all of my foolish blood. So, like, he's not saying that he's actually doing these things, but it's a metaphor for implying that he's going to do them. Foster says, sex is coded rather than explicit. Those multiple levels have traditionally been to protect innocence. And then I also said that related to Araby because if the kid is little, like he seems he is, and he's kind of poor, so like the author is saying that to protect him because he's younger and he's not going to like embarrass him because he's an innocent little kid and he doesn't really realize what he's doing, but he's in love with this girl